بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن سيدنا ونبينا محمد عبده ورسوله صلى الله تبارك وتعالى عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وأولاده وأزواجه وأمته أجمعين. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اقترب للناس حسابهم وهم في غفلة معرضون ما يأتيهم من ذكر من ربهم محدث إلا استمعوه وهم يلعبون لاهية قلوبهم. وقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم: إن الناس كالإبل المئة لا تكاد تجد فيها راحلة، وكما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my dear brothers, elders, sisters and everyone listening online. It's a pleasure and honor to be invited by, my friend Mullah Usama. May Allah Ta'ala protect him, may Allah Ta'ala enable him for good deeds, and all of us to accompany my teacher Mufti Raja Sahib in Glasgow last week and also today, just to share your company and inshallah share some words which will benefit myself and benefit all of us inshallah. You know, it's so good when I was driving here with my friend that I'm from Leicester, and there's so many programs in these days: Christmas Day, Christmas Eve, New Year's Day. And it's so, subhanallah, so important, hugely important that masajid and Islamic institutions facilitate these kind of events. Because if we do not facilitate these kind of events, we create a void of an Islamic lifestyle. If you want to be on the straight and narrow, if you want to be close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is essential that you have an Islamic lifestyle. Without an Islamic lifestyle, you will never get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. An Islamic lifestyle gravitates around the masjid, the Quran, Salah, Islamic events. So, mashallah, congratulations to Mullah Usama, his team, the masjid, and everyone who has supported this to facilitate this event. May Allah Ta'ala reward everyone. The ayah which I recited, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He reminds us that our reckoning, we're all believers. And subhanAllah, just to ensure I don't digress, but just to put things into perspective, this latest census which was released back in November, end of November, that although Christianity has gone down and many other faiths have gone down, Islam, but in addition to Islam, forms of spirituality and other belief systems, not the conventional faith models, they have increased. What this tells us, that those who consider themselves to be atheists still believe in some kind of superior power, and that's innate. That's our innate disposition. So everyone, those who consider them to be disbelievers, don't subscribe to a religious faith, conventional faith model, they still believe there is a higher power out there. They still believe that there's something which is beyond our own ability. This is something which is beyond us. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says that the reckoning is very close for everyone. Yet, despite the reckoning being close, people live a life of heedlessness and neglect. Yeah. And when people sin, people sin due to three reasons. The ulama have mentioned that when people sin, the causes of their sin are generally three. The first, which rarely people sin, is out of ignorance. That when people sin or they do something wrong, they don't do it because they are unaware. They know that it's wrong. Like how many of us and how many people know that salah is farad? Everyone knows salah is farad. But why do people miss salah? Not because they are unaware of the injunction of salah. People who drink alcohol, people who take drugs, people who are involved in gangs, they know that it's wrong. People who lie, people who succumb to their anger, they know it's wrong. So it's not jahala or ignorance which is the reason, but that could be the reason for some people. But very rarely it's the case that people will sin due to ignorance. But some people will. Yeah. And inshallah I'll illustrate with the notion of Ramadan, I'll illustrate all three reasons why people sin. So the first reason why people sin is due to ignorance. Yeah. And that can be remedied very easily by knowledge, learning. If someone doesn't know that salah is necessary, they learn that, okay, it's necessary. And that way, you'll stop sinning. If someone doesn't know that this was haram, this form of business was haram, and they become aware of it, and they learn, then you remedy that, and you can abstain from that sin. Yeah. But most people sin not because they are ignorant of it, they are aware, fully aware. They're fully aware of the injunction of sin, of the injunction of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the requirements of Sharia. But it's the second reason, and this is what's referenced in the ayah, اقترب للناس حسابهم وهم في غفلة معرضون. غفلة, state of heedlessness and neglect. That when a person lives a life of heedlessness and neglect, then he will sin despite knowing that this is due, this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala requires of him. Like Ramadan. When it comes to Ramadan, you'll see the masajid full. People who do business, oh, I better be careful what I say, how I promise, because it's Ramadan. I don't want to make a false promise. I don't want to give someone a false impression, because it's Ramadan. They become aware. Although they knew that it was wrong before Ramadan. Oh, let's not take drugs. Okay, on Eid day we'll take drugs because Ramadan has finished. Subhanallah. So the month of Ramadan brings about a sense of awareness. In Ramadan, people will come to the masjid. People will pray salah. We'll make sure that in addition to the Jumu'ah, they'll pray salah. But out of Ramadan, somehow they forget that salah is necessary again. So if people sin due to ignorance, then in Ramadan, they want to become more pious because they are still ignorant. But really people sin not because of ignorance, they sin because of ghafla. Not jahala, ghafla, which is a state of heedlessness. And most people who sin, they sin because of heedlessness. And inshallah I'll come back to that in a moment. And the third reason, and how we can remedy that inshallah, that's what my focus will be. And the third reason why people sin is because of aada, because of a habit. And like Ramadan, there'll be some people who in Ramadan they still sin. They still cannot control their eyes. They're still involved in certain habits. They can't shake off those habits, even in Ramadan. Why? Is because that sin has now escalated into a habit, is become aada. So when people sin, they'll sin out of jahala, ignorance, but very few sin out of that. And you remedy that by knowledge, simple knowledge. The second reason why people sin, which is most individuals and most cases of sin, is a result of ghafla, heedlessness. And that I will come back to how we can remedy that. And the third reason why people sin is got to do with aada. It's a habit. That even in Ramadan, they'll still sin. They'll still drink alcohol. They'll still lie because it's just habitual now. They'll still miss salah because it's a habit. They still cannot control their eyes because it's a habit. They still will take drugs because it's a habit. They still will drink alcohol because it's a habit. They still use foul language because it's a habit. It's a habit. They can't get away from that. So how do you remedy that? And that is not the focus of my reminder today, but just to mention that requires you to go to a specialist, a Shaykh, put your hands in front, put your case in front of a Shaykh and ask him to support you. It requires a level of intervention. And our teacher, Mufti Raja Sahib, he's a Shaykh, Hazrat Mawlana Mutala rahimahumullah. He has many khulafa, and this is the concept of khilafat and disciple, being a disciple of someone. Anyway, coming back to the focus of my reminder for myself and others, is that most people sin because of ghafla. Allah Ta'ala forgive me, Allah Ta'ala forgive all of us. And we should think that what makes a sin? We know it's wrong. We know we have to protect our eyes. We know we have to protect our tongue. We know we have to control our anger. We know we have to pray salah. The most important thing is salah. We know we have to read the Quran, but how many weeks, sometimes months go by without reciting Quran? Allahu Akbar. So what is it that keeps us away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? What creates this atmosphere of ghaflah? What creates this atmosphere of heedlessness? When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, اقترب للناس حسابهم وهم في غفلة معرضون, their reckoning is very close, yet they are in a state of heedlessness. So what creates this atmosphere of heedlessness? There are many reasons, but I will share with you two. First is when a person forgets that he has to stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When a person forgets he has to stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he will sin and he will do whatever he wants. Why? Because there's no reckoning. A student, you have two students, they enroll in the same course. One knows that at the end of this course I have to take an examination. And the other person, he ignores that, or he's unaware of it. You tell me, the one who focuses on the examination which is due at the end, how will he perform, how will he behave, and how will the other student perform and behave who is neglectful and heedless that there's examination? The one who doesn't care about the examination, he's not going to bother. In the same way, when we remind ourselves that, you know what, we have to stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and every word we speak, everything which we do, there's accountability. لا يزول قدم عبد حتى يسأل عن أربع. A person's feet will not move until he is asked about four things. And عمره فيما أفناه. His life, what did he spend his life in? Did he spend his life, earning, bodybuilding, lavish lifestyles, trips here and there? Go to a restaurant and something compels you that you have to take a picture and show it to everyone. Living your life for others. You go to a trip and you must make sure that other people must know that you are there. Because you're not focused on Allah, you're focused on what other people are doing. You want to impress other people. If you live your life trying to impress people, you'll always live a miserable life. You will never be able to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if you look to please others. And they will never be happy with you anyway, if it entails the displeasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Remember, if you seek the pleasure of people at the expense of Allah's displeasure, you will never be successful. Muawiyah radiallahu ta'ala anhu, when he became a Khalif, he wrote to Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha and he said, Awsini wa awjizi, give me some advice, but make that advice short and sweet. That advice should be suitable and appropriate for my position as a Khalif, that I have to, and I am responsible for the affairs of the Ummah, military affairs, social affairs, economic economical affairs, all types of affairs I have jurisdiction for, I must oversee, I am responsible for. So how can I be successful in all areas? So give me some advice. O sini wa ojizi. Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, so wise, she responded by saying, it was a letter, so she said, wassalam wa rahmatullah, response for the salam, and she said simply, qala Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, that my advice to you is the hadith of Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, which is this, man iltamasa ridallah bisakhatin nas, radiyallah wa ardan nas. Whoever seeks the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he wants Allah to be happy. Not his friends, not his family, not his colleagues, not other people in society. His focus is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That in this situation, what is it that my Allah wants? What is it that I must do to ensure that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is happy and I don't incur the wrath of Allah azza wa jal? He's focused on Allah's happiness. So Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha responds to this request of advice by saying that Prophet sallallahu said, "Man iltamasa ridallah bisakhatin nas." Whoever seeks the pleasure of Allah azza wa jal at the expense of people's anger, people will be unhappy. Your friends, they come on, let's go out here, let's do this, let's do that, and you know that Allah azza wa jal does not approve of this. And you're thinking that if I don't go with my friends, or if I don't listen to my wife, or I don't listen to my husband. I had one person come to me and he invited me to a wedding. And I didn't go because I heard that there was going to be, dancing and music and a lot of the khurafat, a lot of the ills which we find, unfortunately, in marriage. And then we wonder, why do marriages break? Yeah. If you seize the barakah, then Allahu Akbar. What's going to happen? So I said to him that, I just made an excuse. But the true reason was, I didn't want to offend him, but the true reason was obviously there's going to be music and dancing and other things. And then I just hinted to him. And he looked down and said, what can I do? And this is a person who's regularly in the masjid, but what can I do? And he blamed his family that they compel me to do this. They compel me to do this. So sometimes we find ourselves in marriage, sometimes we find ourselves in anything, but many times friends, the people who surround us, that we want to please them, or we don't want to displease them, and we say we take a risk with displeasing Allah azza wa jal. We don't want to displease them, so we take a risk in displeasing Allah azza wa jal. But whoever seeks the happiness of Allah azza wa jal at the expense of people's anger, radiyallah, Allah will be happy with him, and very soon Allah will make those people who are upset with you happy with you. Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha says to Muawiyah radiallahu ta'ala anhu that Prophet sallallahu said, you asking me for advice to be a successful ruler. Remember this, Prophet sallallahu said, whoever seeks the pleasure of Allah azza wa jal at the expense of people's happiness, Allah will be happy and He will make those people who are upset with you happy with you. However, be warned. And she proceeds, the second part of the hadith, وَمِنْ الْتَمَسَ رِضَى النَّاسِ بِسَخَطِ اللَّهِ. Whoever seeks the pleasure of people at the expense of Allah's happiness, سَخَطَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَأَسْخَطَ النَّاسَ عَلَيْهِ. Allah will be angry with him, and Allah will anger those who He sought to please. Allah will turn them against him soon. How many times do we see this? That the friends which we wanted to be happy for, what we wanted to please. Yeah. I was just explaining to someone just 1-2 days ago, I've had people come to me, young people, those who have gone into prison as drug dealers for their friend. Imagine, they didn't want to rat on their friend, so they've been to prison for their friend. Same friend who they've gone to prison for, spent years in prison for their friend, just so they don't rat on their friend. Now they come back to me and they want to almost kill each other. Because if you seek if you seek the happiness of people at the expense of Allah's hunger, the same person who you went in prison for, now he's turned against you and you've turned against him. Because Prophet ﷺ says, you seek the happiness of people at the expense of Allah's happiness, Allah will be unhappy and He will turn these same people against you. This was just a side point. I need to come back to my main focus. People out of heedlessness, when people sin, they sin because they forget that one day they have to stand in front of Allah Azza wa Jal. When you are reminded and when you remind yourself that there is hisab, there's accountability, Allah will ask you, an umrihi fima afna, what did you do with your life? What did you, an malihi fima anfaqah, wa min ayna iktasabah? That your wealth, where did you earn it from? Did you earn it from a halal way or haram way? And how did you spend it? An shababihi wa an jasadihi fima ablah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask you about your youth. What did you do with your youth? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask you about your body. So when a person is reminded and reminds himself that, you know what, I have to stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and give account of this, that will make him focus and that will allow him to escape the atmosphere of heedlessness. So the first reason, so when we say that people sin due to neglect and heedlessness, that's because they forget that Allah Azza wa Jal, there's two reasons I want to share with you. The first reason, which creates the state of an atmosphere of heedlessness, is you forget that you have to stand in front of Allah Azza wa Jal. Yeah. And Prophet ﷺ, you know how you treat people. One time, there was an assistant in the house of Prophet ﷺ. She done something to upset Prophet ﷺ. And what did Prophet ﷺ said? He said, لولا الحساب لأوجعتك. If it wasn't for the fear of hisab, that one day I have to stand in front of Allah Azza wa Jal and give account of how I behave in this world and how I treat you, if it wasn't for this, I would discipline you. But the reason I don't discipline you, the reason I don't react, is because I have to stand in front of Allah Azza wa Jal. A Sahabi came to Prophet ﷺ and he said, Ya Rasulullah, I have abid, I have slaves, and they lie to me, they are treacherous, they deceive me, they disobey me. And he had a whole list of complaints and grievances. And in response, he's saying to Ya Rasulullah, in response to their lying, in response to the dishonesty, in response to the treachery, I hit them, I disciplined them. How will all this fare out, Ya Rasulullah, on the Day of Judgment? So Prophet ﷺ said, you know, everything you do to them, everything they did to you, so their treachery, their dishonesty, their lying, their stealing, whatever, will all be accumulated and put on one side of the scale. And your response will be accumulated and put on the other side of the scale. If what they done to you outweighs what you done to them, then you're in the green and there'll be reward. Ya Rasulullah, what about if what I done to them outweighs what they done to me? So what I've done is disproportionate. Prophet said, then there's hisab, there's accountability. Allah Azza wa Jalla will exact what you've done from you. So he feared this, that one day he has to stand in front of Allah Azza wa Jalla. So he said, Ya Rasulullah, I cannot bear to think what would happen. They are all free. Innahum ahrar li wajhillah. Oh Ya Rasulullah, they are all free for the sake of Allah. So when a person knows that he has to stand in front of Allah Azza wa Jalla and give account of the money he's earned, the way he's treated people, the salah he's missed, the eyes, how he's handled those eyes, how he's handled that tongue, what he's done, then he will know that I must rectify myself. You know, Ubayd bin Umayr, who is a very, very righteous individual, and it is mentioned that Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala, Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala would go to his gathering would go to his gathering. He was a tabi'i, Ubayd bin Umar. And there was a very, very extremely beautiful lady at that time. And she said to her husband that she once looked in the mirror and she was so dazzled by her own beauty. She said, you know what, this beauty which Allah Ta'ala has given me, no one will able to refuse my no one will be able to refuse me. No one will able to refuse me. So my advances, no one will able to refuse my advances. So he said, yeah, you're right, you're so beautiful, everyone will fall for your beauty. However, there's one individual who I say that he will be able to resist your temptation. Your beauty, your temptation, he will be able to resist. She goes, who's this individual who will be able to resist this beauty? He said, if there's one person who's going to be able to resist your temptations, is the Qadi of Makkah, Ubayd bin Umar. Rahimahullah was a tabi'i. So she didn't believe him. So she was, okay, I'm going to test him out. So she went, she put a niqab and she went to Ubayd bin Umar, rahimahumullah. And she said, oh, Shaykh, I need some time on the side. I have a private question which I need your advice on. I need some guidance. So he said, no problem. He took her to a side. And she had beautified herself. And she revealed herself with all this beauty, striking beauty. He looked down. And she tried to tempt him and made advances. And he said, hold on, before you try to tempt me further. These advances of yours, answer these questions, and then I will accept your invitation. Of course, he wasn't, but we'll look to proceed further. But answer these questions. If the angel of death was to come now, if the angel of death was to come now, would your offer still stand? You prepositioning me, would it still stand? She goes, of course not, wallahi la. Of course not. Because I'm going to die. What am I going to do with zina? She goes, okay. When you're in the grave and the Munkar and Nakir come to ask you about, the 3 questions, and you need tathbeet, you need, before you can answer, it's not going to be simple enough to say, yeah, Allah is my Lord, and Islam is my deen, and Prophet ﷺ is my religion. It's not the tongue which will answer, it will be your actions which will answer. Your tongue will not answer on that day, my brothers and sisters. It's your actions. If your actions said that Allah is your Lord, your actions reflected that Rasulullah ﷺ is your Prophet ﷺ, and deen is your religion, then you will be answered. And that's known as tathbeet. This is why Prophet ﷺ said that, once you bury someone, ask for them tathbeet. Ask for them strength in answering. Why? Because now, فَإِنَّهُ يُسْأَلَ الْآنِ. So anyway, he asks her, Ubayd bin Umar asks her a few questions, that on the day of, if Malakul Maut was to come, would you answer, would this proposition stand? Because no. When the angel of Munkar and Nakir are asking you questions, would this proposition and offer stand? No. On the day of judgment, Hisab, you're now thinking that my good deeds on the right scale, my bad deeds on the left scale. Would you want these bad deeds to feature and come and be included in your scale, left scale? He goes, no. So he took her through all the events of the hereafter. He didn't even finish, and she put her niqab back on, and she said, wallahi, this no longer I have intention of this. She returned home and she became such a zahira, ascetic lady, always praying to Allah Azza wa Jal, always in tahajjud, always in she fixed her life, she changed her lifestyle. And then her husband would joke, and he would say that I wish I didn't send her to Qadi bin Umar, because now she doesn't even beautify herself for me. Forget others, she doesn't even beautify herself for me. But the point, my brothers and elders, I wanted to make here, that when we forget about the hereafter, we will the state of heedlessness will set in. And my time is up, so I will not go into the second point, but I will just mention it, inshallah. Mullah and all you other local scholars can speak about this. My intention, wallahi, subhanAllah, this happens quite often. My intention was actually to spend the half an hour which I had allocated on the second point, but that's not even, I've not had the opportunity. But the second point was that your company and the people who you surround yourself with, they will dictate the life you live. And if you choose your friends carefully, you must choose your friends carefully, because al-mar'u ala dini khalilihi, a person, al-rajulu ala dini khalilihi, that a person is on the religion of his friends. If your friends take you towards salah, then they will, you will be a good person. I'd like to just end with this one hadith. Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he says that the Sahaba asked, Ya Rasulullah, ayyu julasa'una al-khayr? Which kind of friends should we have? I'd like to just end with this, that now choose your friends according to this hadith. Ayyu julasa'una al-khayr? Which kind of friends should we have? Who should we associate ourselves with? Prophet said, Man dhakkarakum Allah ru'yatuhu. When you see him, he reminds you of Allah. When he sees him, he reminds you of Allah. Man dhakkarakum Allah ru'yatuhu. وَزَادَ فِي عَمَلِكُمْ مَنْطِقُهُ. When he speaks, you increase in your righteous deeds. وَذَكَّرَكُمْ بِالْآخِرَةِ عَمَلُهُ. And his actions, his behavior reminds you of the hereafter. So my brothers and elders, choose your friends according to the hadith. Associate with those people who, when you see them, you are reminded of Allah. When they speak, it increases you, motivates you to do good. They don't ask you, come on, let's go here, let's go there, let's go drink alcohol, let's do drugs, let's do whatever, haram. They don't encourage you, they don't motivate you to do haram, rather they motivate you to do good deeds. And the third thing is they remind you, their actions remind you of the hereafter. If I had more time, I wish I had, but my focus was actually on creating an Islamic lifestyle, because without an Islamic lifestyle, you are in the midst of heedlessness, which results in sin. May Allah Azza wa Jal give me and you the tawfiq and san. Subhanallah bihamdik, subhanakallah bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Jazakallah. Mama can do the real bayan, which I was going to do.
Jazakallah Maulana for your words of wisdom.